Tilea's Troubles, Part 134. Broad Pieces of Gold. Eclano, Portomaggiore, Winter, 2004-5. Leopold Volker, Admiral of the Sartosan fleet, had gathered sufficient captains and first mates to constitute a quorum. They had arrived in dribs and drabs over more than an hour, each newcomer joining the feasting and drinking, until the sorcerer Adus Arkabar indicated to Volker that the required number was reached, at which moment the Admiral coughed loudly and gestured that the company should all stand, this being the practice to show that a council, not a carousing, was in session. "Welcome all," said Volker. "Let us praise Manan and give thanks that our ventures so far have proved most prosperous." A cheer of "Aye" went up, with a smattering of Manan be praised, and those present drank the last of whatever was in their tankards, bottles, and goblets, then slammed the vessels down upon the table. There followed 3 loud burps, almost tuneful in arrangement, which elicited not even a snigger, for it was entirely expected. Volker gave a smile that somehow failed to contain even a trace of contentment, and continued his address. "As you all know, we received word 4 days since that the city's governor, Lord Nero, would promise to pay a bribe of 50,000 in broad pieces of gold if we were to leave the realm of Portomaggiore immediately, inflicting no more harm nor stealing anything else. Furthermore, he guaranteed us safe passage and promised that his lord and master, Duke Alessio, neither through his fleet nor his army would commit any hostile act against us, wheresoever we be abroad, for no less than a year. The gold was to be paid by the respected banking house Posilico e Crognale, by way of a guaranteed promissory note, redeemable for the sum in full this next winter solstice, at a place of our choosing." "Fighting is good, gold is better," interrupted Captain Van Bass's first mate, Mukib Brahimi, his fist clenching, as if accepting a dose of coins. Volker nodded in agreement. "You all know," he continued, "that we sent Gerino and Hassim to barter. For why agree hastily, when we might get more by haggling? Here, you see, they have returned." The 2 pirates in question, Gerino with his mop of jet-black hair, and Volker's quartermaster Hassim, sporting a yellow turban, looked momentarily nervous as the entire company turned to stare at them. "I have no doubt," said Volker, "that you are all keen to hear what they have to report." The strange non-smile returned, as he too stared at them. "Gentlemen," it was Hassim who spoke, "we met this Nero, Admiral. His anger was obvious, and I think fear also, despite his attempt to conceal both behind a haughty manner. As ordered, we told him that you, Admiral, would agree to his offer, to the full, yes, and begin leaving immediately, if he were to pay 75,000, that is, 25,000 immediately, and 50,000 more as per the promissory note agreement. It was clear he was not, how can I say, keen on this extra demand." "Then?" enquired Volker. "Put plain, he refused to alter the terms one jot. I think it likely he had clear orders from Lord Alessio, and was loath to disobey his master." "Perhaps he is just stubborn," suggested the Admiral. "Or the whole offer is a pretence, and he was just acting his part to make it seem real," suggested Mukib. "I cannot say," admitted Hassim, "but he insisted we accepted the original offer. That or nothing." "Ha!" laughed Mukib. "He should be glad we're even considering it, for the alternative is that we raise every settlement in Portomaggiore to the ground and take everything of worth from the entire realm." "A delightful thought, Mukib," said the Admiral, "but I fear we have not the time to do so. What with the Duke approaching with his army?" All turned to the Admiral, then were immediately distracted when Captain Van Bass scraped his cutlass blade against his iron hook hand, a habit he had when wanting to make his presence felt. His black beard rivalled his black felt hat in size, while his eyes had a stare that would, on anyone else, hint at a jug-bitten state. Not so Van Bass, however, for his face wore that expression morning, noon, and night, both sober and sotted. "Is he, though, Admiral? Is he even close?" asked the captain. This offer proves the Portomaggiorans are weak and afraid. They know full well they cannot win a fight, not yet anyway, not without their army, so they hope to buy us off. If their lord was close, they would trick us into staying, not pay us to leave. Mukib is right. We should keep raising settlements while they cry their tears. We can take much more than they offer with this bribe. Good captain, I value your counsel, said Volker. But before we decide our course of action, I would hear exactly how the negotiation ended. Hassim? I did not want to make it easy for him, Admiral, answered Hassim, so I told him we must discuss the matter, especially how we would explain it to you. The Admiral chuckled, this time his momentary smile more convincing. He had ordered Hassim to accept what was offered, if they could get nothing more. It seemed, however, that Hassim had not rushed to do so, instead playing with the city's governor, pretending they had their orders from a man they greatly feared, and were thus trepidatious about failing to obtain the demanded terms. Hassim continued, We took ourselves to a wharfside alehouse to make it look like we were considering the offer, seriously. Then early morning we returned and said that we agreed to the terms. And Lord Nero believed you? Asked Volker. Like you commanded, I ended by telling him we did not relish facing Lord Alessio's army when it returned. Several among the pirates turned to look quizzically at the Admiral, no doubt surprised by this declaration of weakness. What? Asked Volker, feigning bemusement. Can you not see? If we act as if we fear Lord Alessio's return, then they will more likely believe we are keen to honour the terms of this agreement, more likely to leave quickly. They may then drop their guard, which is no bad thing, whether we leave or stay. Which is still to be decided, said Captain Garrick. We never settled the matter before. We only agreed to accept the offer, not whether we would actually abide by its terms. The sorcerer, Adus Alcabar, spoke in his quiet, almost frail voice. Whether it was magic, or something more mundane like the pitch of his speech, or perhaps even because many rightfully feared what he could do with a flick of a wrist and the hushed utterance of an arcane word or two, the room fell silent so that all could hear him. I suspect Lord Alessio is close, just not close enough to trouble us immediately. This bribe may well be an attempt not to see us off quickly, but rather to delay us just sufficiently for the army to return, whilst also thwarting our further plundering. 2 birds with 1 shiny stone. The gathered company pondered this a moment. Then the Admiral, as was his wont, broke the silence. Aye, perhaps. But I say, if we are not going to leave to hope for payment of the bribe, then we should take more profit than what was offered before we go. To do otherwise is foolishness, for it would be to pursue a lesser profit. We should only put our hopes in the bribe if we cannot make more by looting now. There was general nodding around the table. This is the vote, then, said Admiral Volker. Do we leave or continue looting? Before we vote, Admiral, suggested Captain Garrick, should we not discuss whether it is safe to linger any more? If we tarry so long that we are caught between the garrison and Lord Alessio's army, then we will not only lose the chance of further profit, but risk losing all we've taken thus far, if not our lives. Perhaps some of us are afraid, asked Mukib. Captain Garrick did not even turn to look at his challenger, but instead continued to address the Admiral. This is not cowardice, but common sense, he said. The Admiral must have been pleased that his authority was sufficiently strong that a captain like Garrick would ignore such a slight in order to maintain propriety in his presence. It is common sense, agreed the Admiral. The only way to know how long we can tarry here in Portomaggiore is to have keen eyes watching out for Duke Alessio, with legs beneath that are swift enough to bring us a timely warning. Again there was a general nodding of heads and a murmur of agreement. So, to cut to the quick, who will be those eyes and legs? There was silence. Every pirate in the room knew that whosoever went would miss out on the plundering, which would mean receiving only their official share, allotted after the collecting, counting and partitioning, with no chance to indulge in the pillaging of the precious little things the articles allowed to each man to pocket within reason, and those too expensive to call pillage, but that could be hidden away before anyone noticed. At the back, near the door, unnoticed by the rest, one fellow, Nikolaos Mustopoulos, nudged the man next to him, Cornel Metz. They were both Captain Croll's sailors, Nicolaus being from the Border Princes by birth, and Cornel from the far northern city of Marienburg. Cornel was as close to what one might call a first mate in any other crew, although the arrangements on Croll's ship were somewhat unique, for several many reasons, not least the need to allow passage and lodging to a brute 3 times the height of any man. "What?" whispered Cornel, obviously annoyed. Nicolaus raised his eyes and gestured towards the Admiral. "Oh, aye," said Cornel quietly, then much louder added, All turned to look at them, and the Admiral asked, "Yes?" "We could go," said Cornel. "North, that is. We could keep a lookout." "And west, in case Alessio comes that way?" queried the Admiral. "Aye, northwest, I meant to say," agreed Cornel.
"And you speak for Croll?"
asked Mookib. "I'm first mate, and he's deputy here, so I can decide. Besides, he said we should make the crew useful, so that you all know we are willing to pull our weight." At the battle for Oclano, Croll and his crew had not really had much of a chance to prove themselves out on the far flank. Having bloodily dispatched a body of crossbowmen, they had been forced by circumstance to do little more than watch as the rest of the army fought on, and Volker killed not only a dwarf lord, but 2 brutes almost as large as Croll. Everyone stood watching Croll's men, some with relief, some with curiosity. Cornel took this as a sign that he was required to say more. "Croll can move faster than every man, dwarf or greenskin in the fleet, and he'll make sure we move fast too. Any who can't keep up will leave behind. Croll don't care, I don't care. That way we can bring any warning quick." "Most helpful of you," said the Admiral, a note of suspicion in his voice. Cornel seemed to take the hint. "Oh, of course the captain will expect a proper reward if he does bring warning of the enemy, compensation for the dangers undertaken, and for missing out on the pillaging." A tension seemed to lift from the room, as if all had suddenly understood. "Aye, well," said Admiral Volker, "I think we can all agree to that." There were eyes and nods about the room, which elicited smiles from both Cornel and Nicolaus, if laced with a hint of apprehension. Less than half an hour later, Captain Croll was apparently waiting for them, which made them nervous. What if his patience had been tested? Not one for social niceties, the ogre captain didn't greet them, but rather went straight to the question he wanted to ask.
"Did you convince him to take the army north?"
"They're going that way anyway, Captain, to Afragola," answered Cornel.
"Good. We'll be going with them,"
said Croll. Some of the rest of the crew were with the captain, including his standard-bearer, and the Orcan drummer he insisted beat out commands to his men in battle, despite Croll's voice being just as loud, if not louder. "No, Captain," began Cornel. Croll grimaced and fixed his so-called first mate in the eye.
"Choose your next words wisely," he growled. "I ain't so fond of no, Captain."
I mean no, better than that. He wanted volunteers to go out further, to scout for the Portomaggiore marching army." Croll's grimace changed subtly, if such is possible for an ogre.
"So you volunteered us?"
said Croll. "That I did, Captain, and not a one of them there objected."
"That's because," offered Croll, "they're afeard to go out alone to chance capture by the foe, and more afeard, no doubt, that if they went, they'd miss out on all the looting."
"You're not wrong, Captain," said Nicolaus, finally finding the courage to join the conversation.
"That I ain't, Nicol."
Nicolaus and Cornel's last conversation with the captain had been concerning how best to slip away from the main force, without hindrance and without their absence being noticed for some time. Now that conversation had proved to be a waste of time, for they were going to leave with the Admiral's blessing.
"Cornel,"
ordered Captain Croll,
"go to the ship and tell the lads to set sail, bearing north. They're to keep close to the shore, but not so close when they pass the lightning house. We'll go on foot to search for the prize. Tell the lads we'll signal if we need the ship."
"Aye, Captain," said Cornel, turning away.
"Wait,"
barked Croll. He pondered something for a moment, then continued.
"When you return, bring Stolby and the rat Scarrock back with you. Make sure no one else sees them, especially Scarrock. They'll be coming with us."
Grinning broadly, he looked at the knot of men by his side, announcing,
"I hope everyone has found the land legs, so we've got some marching to do."